Worship Innovators. How's it going? Oh my gosh. I was just standing in the back, just getting overwhelmed. It's been a long time coming, getting this conference going. We started it before COVID happened, and then COVID hit, and we had to shift and go virtual and change. We had to innovate in the moment. And being here, there's nothing like being in person. And I am so happy that you guys are all here. I've met people who have driven in from all over the place, flown in. And it's just great to see you all. So thanks for being here. By a show of hands, how many of you right now would say that you are an innovator? Okay, only a few. And we're going to change that by the time these next few days are over. It's easy to think that only certain people or churches can have the gift of innovation. And I don't believe that's true. Today, I'm going to share 3 things that you can do to become a worship innovator and bring innovation to your church in your role as a worship leader. I truly believe that anybody can be an innovator. So first, what does innovation mean when we say that word? Often the word innovation can be mistaken for invention. It does take a degree of innovation to create a new invention, but you don't have to invent gadgets to be an innovator. Innovation can be improving upon something or introducing something totally new. In other words, innovation can be thought of as doing something new or making something better. And if you're capable of one of those 2 things, you can be an innovator. And I know we all are capable of one of those 2 things. And that could be as small as improving your sound check process at church. It could be improving your worship scheduling process. It could be introducing a new song at your church, or writing a new song. Or it could be as complex as learning how to automate your lyrics and lighting, or use in-ear monitors, or how to use tracks. That's all innovation. With COVID, many of us had to innovate, right? Overnight, churches that weren't live streaming their services had to quickly scramble and figure out, how do I get our church service to be online? And we were all innovating in that. I bet you can think over the past couple of years how your church has innovated, done something different. It all starts with a moment of inspiration. And my hope and prayer is that you are inspired the next 2 days. Innovation happens when inspiration, though, turns into action. And that's when you're going to go home, right? You take the time to learn. You come to a conference like this. You observe and think about the needs that your church has. And then the only thing left to do after that is to find a solution to that problem. So it only takes a spark. Think about it. It only takes a spark to ignite a flame. It only takes a spark to ignite a rocket to shoot into outer space. It only takes a small spark of the Holy Spirit stirring in someone's heart to literally change their lives forever and potentially generations after them. Just a spark. And I want you guys to experience sparks this week. That's my hope and prayer for you. Anybody can innovate. It just takes an openness to the possibilities. You're an innovator, and the people on your team are innovators. So, here's 3 things you can do to spark more innovation. You ready? First thing, curiosity. We simply have to have an attitude of being open to new possibilities. Ask questions. Be curious. That's what innovators do. 13 years ago when I started Loop Community, worship leaders were using tracks in like Ableton Live and different software that actually wasn't designed at all for running multi-tracks in worship. And I asked the question, I'm like, what would worship leaders use their iPad or their iPhone to run their tracks every Sunday? There has to be an easier way, I was thinking. And that was the beginning of the Prime app. And that was the first mobile app in the industry for running tracks in worship from your phone or your iPad. And now we've got 50,000 churches using that every single month to run their tracks. You have to learn to be observational. This week, think about your church. Think about the people who are coming to your church, from regular time attendees and first-time visitors. What is a barrier that people face when they walk in through the front doors of your church? Is it the music in the lobby? Is it the sound? Is it the greeters at the door? It can be all sorts of little things, parking attendants. Think about what's hard, what's a barrier? And whatever you think of is most likely what needs to be innovated at your church. Recently, I lead worship at a very small church plant, not far from here. And recently we had a problem with parents just pushing strollers around in the back of the room. And it was causing a lot of noise. I was actually one of them, pushing strollers around. There was no other place to go to listen to I wanted to hear the message, and everybody else did too. So we literally had a meeting. We're like, this is a problem, what do we do? And we figured out how to set up like a very cheap like Wise Cam, because we're on a budget, right? A little cheap like camera and audio, and we set up like a little overflow room outside in a different room. And now everybody is happy. It's little things like that. That's innovation. Curiosity is allowing space for something to be done a different way. Many churches don't innovate because of tradition, right? We've heard this before. Well, we do it this way because it's the way we've always done it. Being a worship innovator requires us to stop and just examine why it is we do the things we do. You'll discover new ideas that you never would have thought of by simply having an attitude of being curious. A great way to start being more curious is socializing ideas. So there's a problem, you see a problem in your church, get a group of your team together, share the problem with them, and come up together on a solution. You work together to find a new solution, and it's important to get other perspectives. Your ideas will be stronger in the end. I love that we're all together here at this conference because for me, some of my best ideas have been with other people, not on my own. It's been with other people. We need each other. The whole heart and vision and passion behind Worship Innovators is collaboration. And that's why we've got all these companies here, being collaborative together. I originally started Loop Community with 2 other guys. And when I'm curious about a new idea, even to this day, I still get together with one of those guys and bounce ideas off of him. And some dissolve entirely. Others grow and morph into something totally different even. But you have to be curious. Okay, the second spark of innovation is creativity. So we've got curiosity. Second is creativity. The second, this is where you give your mind the freedom to discover solutions that might seem impossible or crazy. So there's no bad ideas. I was on staff at Willow Creek for a few years in their middle school ministry, and I remember when we would have meetings to come up with new ideas for the middle school ministry, we had this little thing called cone of safety. And you put this up over your head like this, and you say, and this is a way to make someone be able to feel comfortable to share an idea and not feel any shame, right? You can just be like, okay, this is crazy, cone of safety. What if we filled the gymnasium up with 3 feet of packing peanuts and let students play dodgeball? And it's just like an insane, crazy idea, right? But those cone of safety ideas always kind of enhanced, and the idea that we ended up landing on usually came from one of those cone of safety ideas. But people have to feel free to be able to open up. It's a journey, and it takes pure imagination to get there. Sadly, most people don't think deep down that they're creative. Some of the people on your team really don't feel like they're creative. They don't realize that creativity is a muscle that needs to be used and exercised to grow stronger. A lot of times we don't even give our creativity a chance. As worship leaders, I know we live in like a very left brain world sometimes where we're just like writing emails, scheduling people, sitting in meetings. And we need to carve out time and space for intentional creativity. Turn off your devices and put yourself in an environment that allows your mind to imagine. I like to do something called thinking time. And it's literally scheduling time in my calendar to think. Bring a notebook and a pen. I set a timer for 45 minutes, and I come with one problem. Don't come with a bunch of problems, one problem. So as a worship leader, a problem might be, and you write this at the top of your page, how can I get my team to show up on Sunday better prepared? That's a problem. Or another question, I actually am experiencing this one right now at our small church plant. I need drummers. Where do I find more? Where? You write that, yep. You write that down, and for 45 minutes, you just let your brain think about that problem. The first 15 minutes of that You're going to get all the low-hanging fruit, the easy stuff. The magic happens, though, in that last 30 minutes. Sometimes in the last 10 minutes. And your brain starts thinking of the stuff that you never, ever would have thought of before. You wrote down all the low-hanging fruit, then you start getting really, really creative ideas. Creativity is within all of us. Give yourself a chance. And you know what? As leaders, we have to give our teams a chance as well. The people on your worship team. Someone on your team might have a great idea of how things could be improved. We just need to ask them and listen. All right, the third spark of innovation is courage. So we've got curiosity, creativity, courage. True innovation only happens when people have the courage to experiment. It takes guts to do something that has not been done before, especially if you're at one of those churches that rides on tradition. It's hard, it's challenging. But if you operate out of the fear of what hasn't been done before, you will never innovate. Live streaming your service might be scary for you. Implementing tracks might be scary. Or implementing in-ear monitors might seem totally impossible at your church. It really might. Right now, you might be like, yeah, all that stuff's impossible. But you know what? It might be the next thing that your church really needs. When I first started Loop Community, it was a huge risk. I went part-time at my worship leading job. I didn't have any money. I didn't know if anybody would ever use our website. It felt really scary and like a heavy fear for me to take steps away from full-time ministry. Or when I told people that I wanted to start a practical training worship conference called Worship Innovators, and then COVID happened, people thought I was like totally crazy. When I had the idea to develop our hardware foot controller, Looptimus. Are there any Looptimus users in here? Oh yeah, cool. So we've got a piece of hardware that you can use to control tracks. When I had the idea to start that, I was going to have to front all the money for the manufacturing of this thing. And so I decided to launch a Kickstarter campaign to try and raise the money. This was like 13 years ago. And I was so afraid of putting myself out there. Here's my idea, what do you think? And I was so afraid, would it fail? Do people even need this? And since then, we've sent tens of thousands of them all over the world. I say that just because the biggest risk is really not taking a risk at all. We have to be okay with uncertainty or even the possibility of failure, which is likely if you're trying new things. Think about Elon Musk shooting all these rockets, right? How many failures did they have? Sometimes when you innovate, you make mistakes. It happens. It's best to just quickly admit it and move on. If an idea wins at your church, celebrate it, have a party. If it fails, acknowledge it, talk about it. What went wrong? Why did it go wrong? What caused this to fail? That conversation that you have with your team might spark the next idea or your next steps in that innovation process. It's so important to have courage. So in closing, those are the three things to become worship innovators. We need to explore our curiosity. We need to make room for creativity. And we need to step into courage. With those three things, we can all learn to be worship innovators. I'm so glad that you're all here this week, because the biggest challenge is actually being intentional to take the time to innovate. And you guys have taken the time. You've flown, you've driven here, you've spent money to be here. You're taking the time to innovate. That's the hardest part. A lot of people don't even get there. Well done. You know what, you guys? Churches are facing some really difficult issues today. There are a lot of new problems to solve. There are things that we're facing now in the church that look very differently than they were pre-COVID. In a post-COVID world, there's a lot of new, different issues. Giving is down in some churches. Volunteers are scarce at some churches, I know. I'm facing that one. There's a fatigue. People are tired. People are burnt out. There's a lack of vision in some churches. There's so much innovation to be done. And I love that we're in this room as a think tank of how do we take our churches and our ministry to the next level for the glory of God. I believe that God wants to give everyone here new and fresh ideas. Being intentional about innovation will change the way that you lead worship at your church. Instead of being stuck in the weekly grind and doing the same thing your church has done every week for the past decade, your church is going to be on the cutting edge of creating moments that people will never, ever forget. Well done. So what I want to do is I want to take 2 minutes in quiet and pull out a piece of paper or your phone, something to write on, and I want you to ask yourself this question. Where does my church need to innovate? What is working? What is not working? And what you write down on this sheet of paper might be what you need for your next thinking time. I'm so glad you all are here. Thank you, guys.